Everybody, we're going to let you all trickle in, get started in a minute or two. Hello, everybody. Great evening. Welcome to the Ms. presentation of everything you ever wanted to know about birth control with Dr. Sophia Yen. This session is actually back by popular demand after Dr. Yen graced us with her presence earlier this summer for a similar chat. My name is Roxy Szal. I'm the digital editor here at Ms. Magazine. I am based in Austin, Texas. A few housekeeping notes before we begin. All attendees are muted and the video will be primarily focused on our presenter and her slides. Should you have a question, you can type it into the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen and we will save time for questions before the end of this webinar. Also, if you experience any technical difficulties, please type that also into the Q&A box and our team will assist you. And if for any reason you get disconnected at any point, just click the link again and it will take you right back into this room. I'd like to welcome back our panelists for today's talk. Dr. Sophia Yen is the CEO and co-founder of Pandia Health, which is the only doctor-led and women-founded and led birth control delivery company. Dr. Yen is a board-certified adolescent medicine physician, and she's also an associate professor of pediatrics at Stanford Medical School. Dr. Yen, I'm so glad to be back in conversation with you. I know that everyone is really anxious to hear what you have to say on issues related to reproductive health care, especially in this time of crisis for women and others who are able to become pregnant. So with that, Dr. Yen, what do you think we need to know about birth control, emergency contraception, periods, abortion pills, and more? The floor is yours for the next 30 minutes or so.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. And I'm always loving the audience that has chosen to come and spend your Tuesday afternoon here with us to learn about the latest and greatest in birth control. And I hope that you can share this with anyone else that might need this information. And thank you to Ms. Magazine for always just being on top of things and sharing important information. So I'm going to jump in and I run Yappy. So definitely throw down any questions you have and I may answer them as I see them come up, or we may answer them at the end. It just depends if I happen to catch them. So as Roxy alluded to, I'm going to cover medication abortion, birth control, emergency contraception, and hashtag periods optional. Number one, this is Dr. Yen's 6 tips now that Roe v. Wade is gone. Make sure everybody you know with a uterus that could possibly become pregnant know about PlanCpills.org. It's a nonprofit website by a friend of mine who I absolutely trust. And you enter your state and it tells you all the telemedicine doctors and services that can provide emergency contraception. And what we see highlighted here is Aid Access, which is by Dr. Maria Gompertz. And if you don't know her, she was the woman who founded Women on Waves, which was in Europe. She would take women out on boats to international waters, perform an abortion where international waters, there is no law, and then bring them back. And then she realized she didn't have to do this taking people out on boats and in water. They could do this by medication abortion. And she must have known that Roe v. Wade was going to go down in the United States, or she wanted to be prepared because she started this telemedicine practice where she writes a prescription from the Netherlands. The medicines come from India, so no one in the US can get sued or put in jail for that situation. And some people might even say that anybody with a uterus that could become pregnant might want to have some of this medication abortion ahead of time. And you can see here it's $110 to get it ahead of time, but also with doctor supervision if and when you need it. Know that medication abortion, you can use it up for pregnancy of 12 weeks after the first day of your last period. and that if you're going to order it from far away, it could take 3 weeks to get there. So as soon as you miss that period, you want to check a pregnancy test, or as my friend who founded Plan C pill said, even more radical, if you have it on hand, as soon as you miss that period, don't even check a pregnancy test and just take the medication to make your period come regularly. And then if there's no pregnancy test, nobody can ever say that you had a termination necessarily. Number 2, a very good resource. It used to be What If Roe Fell, but Roe has fallen. So they've changed it to After Roe Fell. It's the Center for Reproductive Rights. They are the legal arm of the reproductive rights movement. And here's a map of every state. This is an older screenshot. It may be different from now, but they update it almost every day for any new laws regarding abortion. So click on your state and see if there's a waiting period, if it's illegal after X weeks, if there's parental consent, parental notification, other things like that. But in summary, 26 states are very not friendly to reproductive rights right now. There are lots of websites that will come up when you search abortion, and we want to make sure that people are aware of crisis pregnancy centers. So if you don't know about crisis pregnancy centers, I believe the Feminist Majority Foundation has a video on YouTube that's pretty good that exposes them, but knowing what websites are safe and which websites are posers or fakers or fake clinics, as we like to call them, because they don't have any physicians affiliated with them. They're not legally required to keep your information confidential, and they aren't legally required to give you all options counseling. So 2 reliable websites are the National Network of Abortion Funds, and that's if you need money to get an abortion, money to travel, money somewhere to stay, money for childcare. And if you have the funds, please donate to the National Network of Abortion Funds. Here's a screenshot of all the states that they have funds in. And so you can either donate to the national and they'll send it wherever need is most, or you can focus it to a particular state. If there's a particular state that you're in or you want to give back to, that's great. And then there's NAF, the National Abortion Federation. This is a group of abortion providers. They are safe, they are trustworthy. The website is prochoice.org, and they have a warm hotline that you can call if you have any questions about abortion. 4th recommendation is delete your period apps. If you're in a safe state like California, New York, and probably Oregon and maybe Washington, then it's okay. But if there's any chance you might land in an unsafe state and something happens to you, anyway, the period apps, I went to MIT. I have friends that do computer forensics. If it was ever in the cloud, ever on your computer, ever on your phone, they will find it. And this information can be used against you. I saw an article that said it's less likely your period apps and more your friend that's going to tell on you, not so much your friend, but your frenemy or your enemy. And I could see as a pre-med, there's some very competitive pre-meds that might be like, oh, Sophia didn't have her period. She went to California and now her period is back. And so that person could tell on you. Or if you have a competing sorority or a competing sports team or anything like that. So be very careful with your information, and particularly with any private company. Also know that your health information is not necessarily protected by HIPAA. HIPAA, the Health Information Portability Accountability Act, is generally the law that governs privacy, but there are 2 exceptions for HIPAA. One, I can give whatever information I need to the insurance to get paid. So that's doctors / providers. They are allowed in HIPAA to give whatever information to your insurance company to get paid, because that's kind of the point of insurance, is to get you paid. And then number 2, if a judge subpoenas it, I have to give up the information, or I go to jail, or I have to get a lawyer to defend me and stuff like that. So know that just because there's HIPAA doesn't mean you're protected either. If you're going to keep it on paper, make sure, again, only you know the code, because if someone else knows the code and they hate you, then they could do some badness to your life. Number 5, optimize your birth control. So the number 1 cause of people, not one of the top 3 causes of not taking your birth control, is not having it on hand. So getting it delivered and getting it so that you can set it and forget it. That's why I created Pandia Health, so that nobody would run out of birth control on our watch. Shurzy, let's throw up our questionnaire. We have a fun participatory questionnaire for everybody who's on this call. So what form of birth control do you use or used to use? And then what is your favorite form of birth control? So the first question, you can choose as many as applies to you. And then the second question, we want to know what one out of all the ones that you like the best. Though I always recommend condoms plus something hormonal, simply because who likes to leak sperm for the next 24 hours? All right, I think that's some good times for you all to fill it out. Shall we go to the results? Dun, dun, dun. I don't know. There we go. All right, I'm going to read out the results for those people who will be getting the recording because they can't see what you all are seeing. But the people on this call are highly brilliant and elevated. A very, very good method is the IUD with hormone or copper. 42% of our participants here have used it or are currently using it. 83%, which kind of goes with kind of national and international standards, have used the pill at some point. 58% have used condoms, so not 90%. 8% have used withdrawal. Fertility awareness method, 8%. And then this is the fun part, favorite, 50% love their IUD, 33% love their pill, and 17% prefer the condoms. So that, thank you for contributing to evidence and science, and maybe we'll put it out there. Just, we surveyed 38 random people, and this is what we found. All right, so this is a quiz for those of you out there. This is ranking birth control from most effective to least effective. And what blows my mind here is that the implant beats vasectomy. That's just crazy talk, because vasectomy is kind of the gold standard. But you can see here, the implant has a 5 in 100,000 chance of getting pregnant, whereas the vasectomy has a 15 out of 100,000 chance of getting pregnant. So the implant beats vasectomy. And then what blows my mind is the IUD with hormone beats tubal ligation. And tubal ligation is not just snip, snip, it's snip, snip, take out an inch, burn and tie. But some people are very, very fertile and can still get pregnant on tubal ligation, and the IUD with hormone beats that. A lot of people love the IUD with hormone because 30% of the women, their periods go away. Woohoo! And then the other 70%, their periods get lighter. And then comes the shot, which is very effective, but my negatives on that one is it gives you the munchies and it's not so great for your bone density. But pregnant is far worse for your bone density, and pregnant will definitely make you gain weight, though you can lose it, but it's hard. And if you breastfeed, it makes it easier. So the ring, the patch, the pill, the ring beats the patch, beats the pill, simply because the ring, the monthly ring, you have 12 times a year where you can mess up. The patch, you have 52 times a year you can mess up. And the pill, you have 365 times a year that you could mess up. And so if you can choose one where you have fewer opportunity to think about it and mess up, then it's going to be slightly more effective. This is the CDC ranking of effectiveness, but they put the pill patch ring as the same, but research has shown that the ring is slightly better than the patch, is slightly better than the pill for the reasons that we spoke of. The copper IUD is listed here, and it has an 8 out of 1,000 chance of getting pregnant versus the hormonal 2 out of 1,000. So one could say that the hormonal IUD is 4 times better at preventing pregnancy than the copper IUD. And can it affect your hormones? The copper IUD should not affect your hormones in any way. A lot of people are not into hormones, but as I'll go into later, that it's actually more natural to have fewer periods than what we're currently having. And this incessant menstruation is actually a new construct or product of life today. And then condoms, I just want to do a plug again that, I feel if the other gender had to leak my secretions for 24 hours, they would certainly make sure we use whatever the equivalent of condom would be in that situation. And then comes withdrawal and fertility awareness methods. Do I think that period tracker apps are okay? As I mentioned earlier, I do not recommend any period tracker apps because they can be subpoenaed. So unless that company says we absolutely are not going to release your information and we're willing to have a whole bunch of lawyers and go to jail for you, which I can't see anybody willing to do that really, except for a nonprofit like Ms. maybe, or the ACLU, then I wouldn't. There's only one non-hormonal IUD that I know of right now, the copper IUD, though I do know another one that's in the shape of a ball with little pearls on it, and it looks pretty cool, but I'm not sure if that has hormones or not, or if it's another metal situation. If you get pregnant with the copper IUD, will you have a miscarriage? So it's more likely that the copper IUD would cause a quote miscarriage. If an egg and sperm were to happen, it wouldn't stick in the uterus. And in fact, they've noted more ectopic pregnancies, not more than usual. Just if you're going to get pregnant, the only place to get pregnant is the tubes because your uterus is occupied by the copper IUD. So hopefully that has covered all of that. But this is a great image, and this is a great list from most effective to least effective birth control. This is the new birth control, relatively new birth control methods that are out there in general. As physicians, we didn't like the patch. The old patch was, Ortho Evra or Xulane, which has about 50 micrograms of estrogen in the blood. And most birth control pills are about 30 micrograms of estrogen. However, Twerla specifically made their patch such that it would be equal to a 30 microgram pill, which is the standard dose of hormone. And so that was very smart of them because now there's no objections to using this patch, except it does cost $190 a month versus $110 because it's name brand versus generic. And versus a birth control pill, which is very, very generic, $15. 95% of birth control pills are generic. And even people who think they're on a brand, they're like, I want Sprintec, I want Esteria, I want Feminor. Those are all generic. They are not name brand. Name brand is Ortho or something like that. And Pandia Health has gotten Twerla, if you're a cash patient, for $50 a month, we have a deal. So if you have to pay cash, come to us, we'll get you the deal. But I don't know if I mentioned, but under the Affordable Care Act, thank you, Obama and Biden, any FDA approved birth control method, if you have insurance, should be available with no copay, no deductible, AKA free. The only exceptions are Hobby Lobby and other people that have gotten exceptions, but generally you have to be a religious employer. The ones that I forget about are Jesuit colleges such as Georgetown, Santa Clara University, etc., USC. So make sure you know the college you're going to, whether it's Jesuit, and if it is, then you're going to have to come to us and pay cash, or somebody else and pay cash. But if they're not, then in general, it should be covered with no copay, no deductible. If you're paying anything for your birth control, there's a great website, coverher.org, by the National Women's Law Center, that will teach you how to yell at your insurance company, or will help you yell at your insurance company. Do you have to be careful about blood clots with the IUD with hormone? Because the IUD, the implant, and shot are progesterone only methods, they have a far lower chance of blood clots. And so people with a history of blood clots are perfectly fine to use the shot, the progesterone only method. So the shot, the implant, and the hormonal IUD. But you have to check your individual medical condition, but far less concerns with any of the progesterone only methods about clots. And this is just to show you the geek in me had to share. So the peaks and the valleys are the level of your hormone with the birth control pill, up, down, up, down, up, down. And then with the older patch, you see this giant line up here, and envision this part under the curve all filled in. That's how much estrogen you're exposed to, and how much estrogen you're exposed to and how long you're exposed to estrogen is your risk of blood clot. So you can see the risk of blood clot is much larger than the Twerla patch down here, which under the area curve is pretty much covering about the same, if you were to take these peaks and flip them down here, as a 30 microgram pill. There's a 1-year vaginal ring. And when I first met with these people, I was like, oh my gosh, this is totally awesome for those doctors who don't know how to do IUDs and for those doctors who don't know how to do the implant. People can just stick the vaginal ring and leave it up there for a year. Or if you want to bleed, you can put it up 3 weeks, take it out 1 week, have a bleed, put it up 3 weeks, take it out 1 week, have a bleed. That's your call. And they're like, yeah, we have the one with the lowest hormone. And I was like, wait a second, what do you mean? They're like, we have 13 micrograms. And I was like, you mean 30 micrograms, right? And they're like, nah, it's 13 micrograms. And so I'm an adolescent medicine specialist, and we really care about bone density. So this is your Pandia PSA for this moment. I'm going to throw down a couple more during this talk. But if you are under the age of 30, you want to be on at least 30 micrograms, 30 micrograms of estrogen for whatever birth control pill you're on. Because they've shown if you're on a 20 microgram or anything less than 30, it's not good for your bone density. And the pediatric adolescent gynecologist, pediatric endocrinologist, and adolescent medicine at Stanford all agree that until 30, you should be on 30 micrograms of estrogen. However, if you're 30 years and up, you could use the 1-year vaginal ring, and you will have the need until menopause, which on average is about 50 years of age. So I love the fact that you can just stick it up there, leave it for a year. You can take it out for 2 to 3 hours during sexual intercourse, vaginal sexual intercourse. However, my joke is if you forget to put it in, you will be literally screwed, aka at risk for pregnancy. So they've shown 10% of those with penises will notice the ring when they're having sex, and only 10% of them, so 1 in 100, will be bothered by it, such that they'll be like, you got to take it out. So just a heads up if you're going this method. It does not require refrigeration. The negative is it's $2,500 a year, but again, under the Affordable Care Act, if your doctor writes a prescription, it should be available with no copay, no deductible, aka free. And it's been out in the market for 4 years, but I don't know, we haven't heard much uptake of it. Flexi has come out. A ton of people that are anti-hormone are like, hey, there's this new non-hormonal contraceptive gel. And it's pretty much a spermicide. They will tell you it's not a spermicide, and it doesn't technically kill the sperm, but it works just as well as a spermicide. So 15% of people using Flexi will get pregnant, and on spermicide, 16% will get pregnant. But spermicide has been around for a very long time and therefore is very inexpensive. Flexi, $285 to $300 for 12 doses, and you have to use it every single time you have sex. And I remember back in my 20 to 30 something year old age, I would have sex 2 to 3 times a night. So for 4 goes, it's like $300. Crazy expensive. It's made of, for the geeks out there, lactic acid, citric acid, potassium bitartrate, and it keeps the vagina acidic. Just random FYI, the sperm is basic. And so it's reversing and making hostile area for the sperm. It's less effective than condoms, so you could use condoms plus this. It's not for someone who has a history of urinary tract infections, and mainly because it's goop. And if you have more goop, it could block up your urethra and give you urinary tract infection. And do not use it with the vaginal ring because the acid eats the ring. There's over-the-counter birth control. And my new hashtag is #GetTheGoodStuff. Unfortunately, the 2 pills that are on their way over the counter are not the good stuff. If you have access to a physician that can write you for the good pills, that's what I would go with. And it really scares me that the first pill going over is progesterone only pill. And it's specifically the old school one that if you are late by 3 hours, and who hasn't messed up 3 hours because your party ran late or your dinner or you forgot or whatever. But if you had sex within the past 3 to 5 days and you're late by 3 hours, then you need emergency contraception. And if you intend to have sex in the next 3 to 5 days while the hormone level gets back up, you need to use backup condom or not have sex for the next couple of days. And so our joke in medicine is, what do you call a woman on the progesterone only pill? You call her mama or pregnant, because it's very, very hard. However, for those that are breastfeeding, we don't want to give them estrogen because it will shut down the breast milk. And so in general, we are okay with the progesterone only pill. And so I think if everyone goes for the over-the-counter progesterone only pill, we may see a ton of pregnancies. And then there's another pill, 20 microgram ethinyl estradiol levonorgestrel pill. And as I mentioned, you need at least 30 micrograms until you're 30. So for the 30-year-old and up, go for it. But for those under 30, if they start using this, then they're all going to have bone issues in the future. Top 3 reasons for missing a pill: forgot, away from home, no new pack. And how do we solve that? Have an alarm. We all have, a lot of us have cell phones, and you can have the alarm go off. Even better, my friend has this geeky birth control holder that if you have the 4 weeks by 7 thing, that it looks to see if you poke through the hole. And if you didn't poke through the hole, it will keep calling your phone or ringing your phone or whatever, maybe sending you email alerts or something until you pop out that pill and take care of it. Away from home, ask for an extra travel pack. And that's what we always do at Pandia Health. We try to give you as many packs as possible. And I always have one in my toiletry bags with the toothpaste, toothbrush, and then I carry one on me, because if I don't have a pill when I get to Vegas or Hawaii or whatever, then I'm going to be bleeding when I don't want to bleed, or I can't have sex when I want to have sex. So get that extra pack. And then this is something for you to do. As a doctor, I never realized when I write for dispense 1, refill times 12, I have chained you to the pharmacy. The pharmacy is not allowed under law to expand the prescription, but they are absolutely able to constrict the prescription if insurance doesn't allow 3 packs or 13 packs or 17 packs. But no, under the law, 20 states allow a year's supply at a time and say that insurance has to cover that if your doctor writes it that way. So tell your doctor to dispense 13 packs and see if your insurance will give you all at once, because the research has shown more women are likely to be on their birth control if we don't make them go to the pharmacy every single month and get those medications, but instead give them 13 packs to begin with. And if you're skipping your bleeds every month using the pills, then you'll need 17 packs. And then, as I mentioned before, delivery services are a great way to set it and forget it. And I strongly encourage you to compare ratings of different companies, and perhaps the only doctor-led, the only women-founded, women-led company is kind of crushing the others in their patient satisfaction scores. Number 6, know your emergency contraception options and get it in advance. So I gave this talk about 4 years ago to a bunch of doctors, and only 1 in 60 knew the prescription option of emergency contraception. So we're going to throw up our quiz now from Shirsi to see what you all know. How many emergency contraceptives are there out there? Many distinct types. So not just one and all of its generics, because there's a lot of that, but different types of emergency contraception. I think you'll be surprised and hopefully not learn anything new. Many of you here are very educated. I saw, all of you being on the IUD and whatnot, though the implant beats all that, just saying. All right, I think that's good time. Let's see what the results are. Very good. 58%, 4 or more options for emergency contraception. Yay! And then the other ones, you'll learn on this next slide, and you'll join the rest of us in knowing. So, and you can teach your doctor. So that's why we titled this talk, What Your Doctor Doesn't Know Could End You Up Pregnant. Going from left to right is the most effective emergency contraception to the least effective emergency contraception. And as you can see here, there are 4 distinct options, and one could even say the 2 IUDs are different, so that could be 5. But 4 is generally what sticks out in people's brains, which is the IUD. So the copper IUD we've known works as emergency contraception. As a contraception in and of itself, I'm not too much of a fan, and it's really important that you all know and you share that the 2 side effects of copper IUD is more blood, more cramps. But each person is different, and if you're the kind of woman who has your period and you're like, is that blood dripping down my leg? Then you are a good candidate for the copper IUD. But if you're like me and you're like, I feel every single blood, every cramp that comes through, maybe not so good for the copper IUD, because I've been on Reddit and Quora, and the women on the copper IUDs like, I have cramps, I am bleeding. And I was like, did nobody tell you those are the top 2 side effects? And maybe they did, and they thought it's not going to happen to me. And then it has happened to them, and now they are sad. So but for emergency contraception, it works 99.99999% of the time. So if it were me, my daughter that were sexually assaulted, and I wanted a 0.0001% chance of being impregnated by my rapist, I would run to the ER and I would be like, throw up a copper IUD. And you don't necessarily have to keep it in longer than a week, but you could leave it in there for 10 to 12 years for long-term birth control. They recently did a research study, actually not so recent, January 2021 in the New England Journal, if you want to quote that to any doctor who's going to give you any hard time with this, or you can always just refer to Dr. Yen, and my talks are on the internet everywhere now, that you can use the hormonal IUD, which, as you know, we're all fans of, because 30% no period, 70% lighter, very effective. Only the implant and vasectomy beat it. You can use that, and the research has shown a 3 out of 319 people that they did in a study versus the copper IUD got pregnant. So it's a very, very good method for emergency contraception. And then you can leave it in for 5 to 7 years to prevent future pregnancies if relevant. But you can also leave it in for menopause progesterone protection of your uterus if you are heading towards the menopause age. So useful for a wide range of ages. The one that a lot of physicians didn't know about in addition to the IUDs is the next one, Ella. It is prescription emergency contraception, and under the Affordable Care Act, if a doctor writes for it, no copay, no deductible, aka free. It beats Plan B in its generics, which you see in the next column, at every time period, and it works for a body mass index up to 35. If your BMI is 35 or greater, you only can use the IUDs. The Ella, the Plan Bs won't work for you, won't do anything. It's just a waste of money and time. And then Plan B, I don't recall if it's on the next slide. Let's take a peek. Okay, we'll hit it there. But the key limitation of Plan B will be body mass index, and that will be a PSA we will hit. And then the last one is take a bunch of birth control pills now and a bunch of birth control in 12 hours. But again, most effective to least effective. If you're stuck in the middle of nowhere and all you have is a pack of birth control pills, and it has to have levonorgestrel or norgestrel, no other progesterone will work for emergency contraception, then you can take a bunch of pills, and you can look it up. It depends on the pill. This is just showing you pregnancy rate. The lower the rate, the better. So Ella is in red and Plan B is in blue. And at 0 to 24 hours, Plan B has roughly 2.5 times the amount of pregnancies that Ella has. And then at 0 to 72 hours, it's 2.2 versus 1.4. At up to 5 days, it's 2.2 versus 1.3. So Ella has fewer pregnancies at every single time point compared to Plan B and its generics. And I don't get paid by Ella. I just don't want anybody to be pregnant that doesn't want to be pregnant. This is the Pandia public service announcement. If your BMI is 26 or greater, my BMI is 25, and if I eat a whole bunch of dessert and it's Thanksgiving, it definitely hits 26. Plan B and its generics are not so effective. So please, please, please tell everyone to check your BMI to see if it's 26 or greater. If it is, I wouldn't consider using Plan B. I would instead strongly suggest Ella, which is olipristal acetate, or an IUD. And then if your BMI is 30 or greater, Plan B and generics do not work. So that's an even more severe, recommendation. You have to consider Ella or the IUD. And as I mentioned before, if your BMI is 35 or greater, then you only have the IUD. Emily asks, is there genetic testing for birth control side effects like there is for antidepressants? And there is one company working on that currently. At Pandia Health, we've come up with an algorithm based on your BMI, your age, and your race as a proxy for genetics. But I've also taken my MIT, UCSF, Stanford brain, taken all 40 birth control pills, ranked them. Most likely to give you breakthrough bleeding, least likely to give you breakthrough bleeding, most likely to give you munchies, least likely to give you munchies. And what I was taught at UCSF and Stanford is great for a Caucasian female that wants to bleed every month. But if you're Asian, Black, or you don't want to bleed every month, then we found a pill that works better, which results in 82% retention at a year for new birth control users versus the standard 55%. And in the future, we're going to ask you, if you have your genetics, then like if you have color or 23andMe, if you can give them to us, then we can study it, throw it in, and we'll be like, oh, you have this genetics, this is the best birth control for you. You have this genetics, this is the best menopause medication for you. So if you want expert care by expert doctors, Pandia Health, the only doctor-led, the only women-founded, women-led company, might be the way to go. Emergency contraception, my professor, Dr. David Grimes, love him, OB-GYN from UCSF and now moved to Chapel Hill and also I think Population Council, said that emergency contraception should be thought of as a fire extinguisher. You want it ready to go to, save your house from burning down. And as I like to say, if the condom pops at 3 a.m., I want the medicine in the uterus-bearing heterosexual sex relationship person at 3:10. I do not want any cuddling, snuggling, waiting till the morning after, or waiting until 5 days after, because you heard me say you could have 5 days after, which you can, but that's for your friend who shows up on day 3 and is like, oh my God, the condom popped. You'd be like, here, take some emergency contraception. But for you who have heard this talk or anyone you share this with, 3 a.m., 3:10, medicine in the mouth, and have it ready. And at Pandia Health, with any birth control pill patch ring, we're like, you want some emergency contraception with that? And then we write in the prescription, please give the patient the one with the farthest expiration date. And so you can see here, I got my pack of Ella because I have 2 daughters and I just want to be safe and also have it around in case anybody needs it. And I got one that has an expiration date of 18 months from now. And if you can't use it, you can put it on the table, maybe at a dorm, in a college. I'm sure somebody will want to use it. And in fact, we've heard crazy university needs like 1,000 emergency contraception or more. So hopefully we can get people on better birth control methods so they don't need emergency contraception. Because if you're using your pill patch ring, and then you don't need emergency contraception unless you miss 3 days in a row. And if you don't have emergency contraception, then your house burns down. So think of it as a fire extinguisher waiting. Again, it should be free, no copay, no deductible. If you don't have insurance, it's roughly 40, 50 bucks for emergency contraception, the good stuff. And I think it's worth that for over 2 years, to prevent unplanned pregnancy. It's really important. The future, I believe, of telemedicine is about quality and trust. And telemedicine has gotten quick, fast, easy, but buyer beware. Caveat emptor, is that the phrase? Check how to check the quality of an online service. So you can Google Pandia Health, good versus bad telemedicine, or how to find a good telemedicine provider. But one, who is the CEO and founder? I believe I'm the only CEO in the birth control field that has taken the oath, do no harm. Can't say the same of my competitors. And I adhere to the practice, and our company adheres to the practice that we do what we would do in a doctor's office. We're not going to do things in a faster, sloppier, skipping steps kind of method or pushing something that's not in your best interests. I like to say, as long as I'm CEO and or this company holds my values, we will always tell you what's best for your health, even if it doesn't benefit our bottom line. And because we're here to be the online health brand women trust. 2, do they list their providers first and last name? And if they don't, why not? Do they have very high turnover? Are they abusing their doctors? Or their doctors don't want to be affiliated with what's going on in this company? Are they opt-in or opt-out? And so at Pandia Health, we are opt-in. You wouldn't go to your doctor's office and they would be like, I'm going to write you for 20 female condoms and I'm going to bill it to your insurance and I'm going to send it to your house unless you stop me. No, we'd be like, do you want female condoms? How many would you like? Okay, here's your prescription. You want me to fill it and send it to you? Okay. So don't go or think twice if somebody is trying to push something in the middle of your medical visit that is not medically required, or if someone is billing your insurance, even though it's free to you, they may be racking up $200,000, $500,000 to the healthcare system for something that a lot of people don't use. Because I haven't heard of many heterosexual people using female condoms. It's mainly men who have sex with men for anal sex. And then lastly, if it were me, my daughter, my friend, I'd want somebody who's an expert on this. I wouldn't want somebody who could do everything, but not like if you do erectile dysfunction and then you go into birth control, those are very different things. Erectile dysfunction is urology, and then birth control is primary care OB-GYN. I've spent the past 6 years only doing birth control. I wrote 2,000 prescriptions over 2 years, and I've studied birth control while other people are doing COVID, runny nose, all sorts of stuff like that. So you want an expert, a menopause expert, a skincare expert, an academic who is, knows their stuff, is cutting edge, knows how to read the literature, knows how to get you the best possible care. And then lastly, hormone therapy. No longer should we be calling birth control pills, though we can as well, patch ring, but they can also be hormone therapy in those hostile states. And that you are using hormone therapy, not birth control pill, patch ring, to level the playing field. And by that, I mean that we are using it such that you are using it to not have periods, and we'll go over the benefits of not having to have the periods and the science and safety. Shirsi, you want to throw up our fun little questionnaire? So our question is, in an ideal world, how often would you want to have a uterine bleed? Monthly, every other month, every 3 months, once a year, or never? We'll give you a couple of times. Some people find it, they feel better when they're bleeding. Some people see it coming of age. There's many ways, many different cultural interpretations of your period. All right, let's see what the numbers say. Okay, 18% would want to have a monthly bleed. 6% could go to every other month. 6% could be every 3 months. 18% would go once a year, and 50% would go never. That might correlate with the IUD people, which 30% have no periods and all the rest have lighter periods, as well as if you're on the pill patch ring, you can also make periods optional, which I'll go over here. I thought I came up with the concept that we don't have to bleed every month when I was trying to get pregnant with my first baby. I realized the only reason that those of us with uteruses in the bleeding age bleed is because we build up that lining every month and we're like, embryo? Oh, no embryo, bleed. And then the next month we build up, we use energy, we use blood, we have hormones going in our body. Embryo? No embryo, bleed. And we do this from age 12 and a half to 50 every single month, except for the times that we're pregnant and breastfeeding, which is for many of us in the United States twice in our lifetimes. However, Dr. Coutinho in 1999 with Dr. Roxy Szal, the founder of the Norplant, came up with this and have a great book with lots of scientific articles showing that menstruation can be optional. So a lot of people are like, wait, that's not natural. You have to bleed every single month. And I'm actually going to show you that normal human biology is fewer bleeds than we are currently having. Dr. Beverly Strassman, an anthropologist, studies the Dogom tribe of Mali, Africa. This isn't like decades or centuries ago. That is now and today. And they die at the same time we die, 70 to 80 years old. So we're comparing apples to apples, not apples to oranges. She studied the menstruation hut, which is a totally different talk altogether, that women are banished to this hut every time they bleed in their society for 736 nights. What she found on the left is the Dogon tribe, what we call natural, and on the right, the United States or first world countries, which have delayed and decreased childbearing. First of all, they start their periods at 16, menarche. We start our periods at 12. And this is a nutrition thing. Once you hit 100 pounds, 22% body fat, generally your body's like, you got enough nutrition. Let's make a baby. And then 7 periods a year, again, a nutritional thing. We have lots of nutrition in the United States. So we have 13 periods a year. More importantly, they have 8 or 9 children. We have 2 children. How many periods do you have when you're pregnant? 0. So they spend 8 to 9 years pregnant with no periods. We spend 2. But also 12 months exclusively breastfeeding. We breastfeed 0, 3, or 6 months. How many periods do you have when you're exclusively breastfeeding? Generally 0. And so in some TLDR, they have 100 periods in their life. We have 350 to 400. We have enough for 3 other women. And they have no ovarian and endometrial cancer. we have ovarian endometrial cancer. They spend most of their life, like 20 years, 20 years with children and breastfeeding, pregnant or breastfeeding. We over here are bleeding every single month. So it is more natural to have fewer periods than what we are currently having. And I forgot to mention, every time you build that lining of the uterus, it can mutate and turn into cancer. So if you do that 350 to 400 times versus 100 times, you're going to have a greater chance of endometrial cancer. Every time you pop the egg, we don't know if it's the popping, the healing, or something to do with the tube, you risk ovarian cancer. If you have a family history of ovarian cancer, we actually recommend going on the pill patch ring for 5 years to decrease your risk of ovarian cancer by 50%. The only other way to decrease your risk of ovarian cancer is bilateral oophorectomy, which is taking out your ovaries, which we don't recommend because it would throw you into premature menopause and would also be a surgery that you don't necessarily need. Certainly, if you have a family history of ovarian cancer and there's genetics and all sorts of crazy things, then maybe, but that's not my specialty. What's better with stable hormones or no bleeds? Acne. I used to get, I don't know, some of you are probably back in my day, there was the Oxy commercials with the North Star, and I would get the North Star every single month, a zit here, a zit here, or a zit here, giant, painful, pus-filled zit. But once I went on the birth control pill, that lowered my circulating testosterone, and then I didn't get zits every single month. But if you don't have a bleed every single month, then you won't have that trigger for the zits. Arthritis is better with stable hormones. And so when you have a period or even a withdrawal bleed on the birth control pill patch ring, you have 3 weeks hormone, 1 week off, and that drop is not as good for these chronic health conditions I'm about to name versus, and if you're just not on the pill patch ring or IUD or implant or shot, your hormones are up and down every single month. Depression is better with smooth hormones versus up and down. Diabetes and seizures, where it's very important to control your sugar, very important to control your seizure drug medication. And then period-related problems. If I get rid of your periods, then you don't have period-related problems. Dysmenorrhea, which is painful periods. Menorrhagia, which is heavy periods. Premenstrual syndrome or PMDD. If you don't have menstrual, then you don't have any of these problems. The number one cause of anemia in a menstruating woman is menstruation. And just envision, I like for those people who don't have uteruses, taking a knife to your arm and go and let yourself bleed 1 week out of 4, because that is what we are doing. We are bloodletting ourselves 1 week out of 4. And if you have a bleeding disorder, von Willebrand's factor is often picked up on your first period when you wake up and you've got blood all over the bed because you have a bleeding disorder. And as I mentioned before, having fewer bleeds results in fewer, lower risk of ovarian, endometrial, colorectal cancer. Oh, the colorectal cancer I like to hit upon because the uterus is here, the colon is there, the uterus is like up and down, and the colon's like, I'm sorry. And so I think it either runs faster, and that's where you get diarrhea, or it goes slower and you get constipation. But I just want to say 30% of those people who have uterine bleeds will have some GI upset. And I want you to know that you're not alone. Hashtag stop sucking it up. If you have any health problems, tell your doctor, get it taken care of. Don't be like, oh, it's just life. It's just part of being a woman. No, we have medications to help you. All right. I can't get to the next slide. What's going on? I might have to exit. Oh, there we go. Yes. Dysmenorrhea, painful periods, is the number one cause of missed school and work in those women that are under the age of 25. And I've seen it in communities where young women miss 2 days of school every single month. And you're like, 2 days of school, that's nothing. There's only 20 days of school in a month. I'm learning because my kids get a lot of holidays and things off. That's 10% of her education. I like to think of our education like a wall of cheese, and you're punching out 10%, punching out 10%, punching out 10%, punching out 10%, and you put pressure on that system, it's going to collapse. She doesn't know what she missed. She's not going to catch up. It's not a good thing. So if you know anyone missing school or work, please have them see their doctor. And the first line of treatment is actually contradictory, counterintuitive. It's 400 to 600 milligrams of ibuprofen with food 3 times a day, up to 5 days, assuming you have no kidney problems. That will decrease the amount of blood by 30%. And so that helps a lot of people. And if that doesn't work, then you have to consider the pill, the patch, the ring, IUD, implant, or shot. Academic competitiveness, anecdotally, if you're worried about having your period, I have teenagers, they're already worried about so much, just another thing for them to worry about. And then the Chinese Olympic swimmer came out of the pool and she's like, ugh, I lost a millisecond because my period. And I was like, who's your doctor? If I were your doctor, I would make sure that you are nowhere going to bleed anywhere near the Olympics. And the US soccer team, they're like, ooh, we have this app and it helps us like coordinate and sync and like nutrition and stuff. And I was like, again, who's your doctor? Because if I were your doctor, I would make sure that you are nowhere near bleeding during the Olympics. But again, it's your choice. You can bleed if you want to bleed on your sports, but I would strongly not suggest it. And the example I give is I was pre-med, MIT, biochemistry final, all of a sudden, blood. And I'm like, do I run to the bathroom or do I finish the exam? And all of you pre-health people know the answer. You finished the exam. Was I a little distracted? Yes. I looked to my left, I looked to my right, 2 people without uteruses, not a care in the world. I have 2 daughters and I want them to be the not a care in the world. So we've given them the option of making #periods optional. And generally, I would recommend doing that 2 years after the first period. But if your periods are really horrible, you can start it before then, but you might lose 1 to 2 inches of theoretical final height. And I come from short Asian stock, so we're trying to get them a little taller. Environmental. We with uteruses who bleed are using 10,000 to 13,000 tampons or pads. And kudos to all of you who can use Diva Cup and panties that suck up blood without having to use tampons and pads. But for those who can't access that or aren't ready, then that's a lot of landfill and a lot of money that we're using up. So it's a difficult concept to convey. If you're not on hormones, yes, you better have a period every single month. And if you don't, talk to your doctor. Might be malnutrition, might be too much exercise, might be pregnancy, might be thyroid problem, might be tumor in your head. However, if you want, we have the technology to make #periods optional. And if you want a recap of this talk, it's my TEDx talk from Berkeley. Go to pandiahealth.com/periods optional. So lastly, get angry and active, vote, get everyone you know to vote, and then volunteer for, donate to, amplify pro-bodily autonomy, pro-abortion rights candidates and elected officials, such as Governor Whitmer of Michigan, Stacey Abrams, Reverend Senator Warnock. I love that he's a reverend. When I heard he was a reverend, I was concerned, but I heard that he as a youth was a member of the Governor's Commission on Reproductive Health. And I was like, oh, I just love you. And then Secretary of States are really important. They can totally screw up the election or throw the election in the wrong way. So you want to make sure that you just check this at all levels, even school board and more. Okay, I'm done. Yes, thank you. Thank you all for coming on, and I'll turn it over to Roxy.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Dr. Yen. That was awesome. I'm sure y'all can kind of see why we got Dr. Yen to come back and why, the last cohort of listeners demanded this again, because it's just, chock full of information. And just a reminder, we will be sending a recording of this back to all of y'all probably tomorrow or the next day. So you'll be able to rewatch it if you missed anything. A couple of questions I'm seeing in the chat. Someone's asking, can't prescribing birth control cover up symptoms of things like PCOS without searching for a solvable root cause? And related question, isn't our hormone cycle important for physiology?
So there definitely is a movement that the menstrual cycle is your 4th vital sign. So in medicine, we have heart rate, blood pressure, temperature, and definitely should ask when is a person's last menstrual period, because as I mentioned, if you don't have it and you're not on any hormones, then I need to look for other reasons, like why aren't you having your period? Birth control can absolutely cover up polycystic ovarian syndrome, but I wouldn't say it's covering it up. It's actually the first line medical treatment for polycystic ovarian syndrome. However, what we do see is a lot of people say, oh, birth control made me infertile. And what it is if you take 50 people and don't put them on the birth control pill, and then take 50 people and put them on the birth control pill, and then 20 years later, compare the two and take these off and see who can get pregnant, 1 in 10 in both groups is not going to be able to get pregnant. And that's because 1 in 10 have polycystic ovarian syndrome. 1 in 10 people with a uteri will get polycystic ovarian syndrome in their life. And if you're on the heavier side, that messes up your insulin and increases your risk for polycystic ovarian syndrome. So yes, you could have polycystic ovarian syndrome, and by being on the birth control pill, you wouldn't know it till you come off, and you might miss the opportunity to make lifestyle changes or to get metformin, which is what I would recommend if you have PCOS. Get metformin and the birth control to treat the PCOS is the optimal treatment, in my opinion. But currently, guidelines state that the first line medical treatment for PCOS is birth control. I'm like stuck on medication abortion, not relevant. And really important for people to know that Plan B is not an abortifacient. If you have a positive pregnancy test and you pick Plan B and its generics, nothing happens. Plan B and its generics is a progesterone, and we actually give progesterone to women who have recurrent miscarriages to help them maintain their pregnancy. So once the egg and sperm hook up, if you take Plan B and its generics, you might be supporting the pregnancy. The main way it works is it tells the body, she's pregnant, don't pop out another egg. And that's why you need to take it ASAP. So just wanted to put that out there because that's a thing that keeps coming up over and over again. Don't confuse medication abortion, which is you have a positive pregnancy test, you want to end the pregnancy, you don't want to do surgery, you want to take medications. Mifepristone, misoprostol, totally different drugs than Plan B generic and olapristal acetate Ella.
Awesome. We have a question. My birth control has a week of pills you take when you want a period, but if I don't take them, I still spot bleed for a week.
Yes. So it depends on you. Each person is different and each person responds differently, but know that there are 8 different progesterones. And so, as I mentioned, what I was taught at UCSF and Stanford doesn't work so well if you want to skip. If you want to skip, you need something with a little stronger progesterone. And so the one that's not so good for skipping is called norgestimate. So look at the technical name of your progestin. If it's norgestimate and you're having breakthrough bleeding, that's why. If you're on desogestrel, drospirenone, levonorgestrel, norethindrone, those are better for not having breakthrough bleeding. And then because, I want to make sure people have the least amount of side effects, no munchies, no zits, and no breakthrough bleeding, we've come up with a better algorithm to help people find a better progesterone. So, yes, if you do not have to take the special pills that have 84 active and 7 placebo to skip your bleeds. You can just always skip the sugar pills that are in a pack and go straight into the next one. The first time you try it, most people get breakthrough bleeding in about 2 or 3 months. And in the old days, we'd be like, just suck it up, barrel it through. New hashtag, don't suck it up. So it also applies to this. Come off of it for 4 days or 5 days. That'll clean out the uterus and then restart. And it's not building. It's just, but sometimes it's like, I'm going to dribble a little. And if you're going to dribble a little, come off of it for 4 days, have a bleed, clean the sucker out for 4 days. And then on day 5, whether or not you're bleeding, start the pill and you should be able to get out further. But another caveat on there is that you can be infected with periods by your roomies. So the example I give is when I was, 45-year-old woman doctor taking my pills, no bleeds for the past, 10 years. But then I get roommates who are both 21 for this pitch competition that's coming up. And all of a sudden, bam, comes my period. And I was like, what the? I'm a doctor. I know how to take my meds. I've taken my meds. What the? I don't want to be bleeding on pitch day. And then the woman next to me is like, I got my period. And I'm like, "Urgh." And then the woman next to me is like, I got my period too. And I was like, you nubile 21-year-olds, you infected me with your period. And I have a 16 and a 13-year-old daughter. And I'm like, you stay away. I don't want to spend 8 hours in the same bedroom as you or 8 hours in the same room with you because you're going to infect me. My 13-year-old comes up to me like, Mommy, I'm on my period. I'm like, you stay away. Do not infect me. So If you weren't in a room and all of a sudden you got two roommates and one of them is every 28 days, she can infect you with her.
Oh my God. All right. I mean, we could talk about this for hours, but we're at the top of the hour, so I am going to wrap this up. Dr. Yen, this was just incredible. Especially in this time period of after the overturn of Roe v. Wade, I think has been a real wake-up call for people. And it was a good reminder for me, and I think for a lot of people that joined us tonight, that we need to take charge of our own reproductive health. And this was an essential first step. For everyone that's still on the call, we hope you answered your questions and that you took something meaningful away from this. We at Ms. would love to stay in touch. And the easiest way to do this is to sign up for our weekly news alerts. That link just got dropped in the chat. Thank you so much. Sophia, I'm going to let you close it out. Any final words?
I want to say, please vote. It's very important. Please check where your people stand on reproductive rights. Please follow Pandia Health on all our socials. And there's this cool petition that we partnered with Turn Up, which is getting out the vote in high school seniors as well as college students. So go to Turn Up. They're going to drop it. There we go. turnup.us, because I'm like, they have a weird ending and spelling. /petition. And if you know anyone applying to colleges right now, be it grad school or undergrad or anything, this is a petition to the governors of anti-choice states that we are not going to apply to your colleges unless you respect women's bodily autonomy. And again, I have a 16-year-old Asian American computer science major that's not going to be applying to your colleges. She is expressly forbidden to do so unless you respect her reproductive rights. Because as you all know, unfortunately, 1 in 4 college students will be sexually assaulted with a uterus. And that is just horrifying. And I believe that if that happens, you should have the right to decide what happens to your body. But regardless of rape, we should always have the right to decide my body, my choice, your body, your choice, my body, my religion, your body, your religion. And I really feel it's about freedom, equality, and freedom of religion, which is a fundamental, so many fundamentals of this country. So if you have time, please sign that petition, please share that petition. And so much thank you all for coming, and thank you, Ms., for having us.
So much, Dr. Yen. Thank you. We will be in touch, everyone. Talk to you soon. Thank you again. Bye. Have a good night.